You did not arrive here by accident. This moment was summoned. There are movements in heaven that do not happen without cause, and I speak now because something you did stirred the courts of the Most High. Not something loud, not something celebrated by men, but something quiet, unseen, and faithful. An action taken when no one was watching. A decision made when it would have been easier to turn away. A choice to remain aligned when the weight was heavy and the path was unclear. Heaven noticed. I speak as a messenger of divine authority to tell you that the spiritual realm has responded to what you released from your heart. This message is not arriving early, and it is not arriving late. It is arriving at the precise moment when heaven has determined that you are ready to understand what is unfolding. You were drawn here because a sacred response has already been set in motion, and your spirit was called to hear this before your eyes see it. There are seasons when obedience echoes louder than prayer. Seasons when faith, lived quietly, speaks more powerfully than words spoken aloud. You are in such a season now. What you did, what you chose when no reward was guaranteed, rose like incense before the throne of God. It moved the unseen. It stirred the angels. It activated a response that could not be ignored. Do not measure this moment by what you feel. Do not judge it by what you see around you. Heaven's movements often begin in silence. The earth remains still while the spiritual realm shifts. That is why this message carries urgency. Not fear, but timing. Not pressure, but precision. There is an opening now, a sacred opening, and you were meant to become aware of it. You may have wondered if your endurance mattered, if your restraint was worth it, if the path of integrity you chose truly changed anything. I speak to answer that question clearly and without hesitation. It did. Heaven was stirred because your obedience aligned with divine order. And when divine order is honored, divine response is released. This is not about earning. It is about alignment. You did not act to receive a reward, yet a reward had been authorized. You did not obey for recognition, yet recognition has taken place in the spiritual realm. What is being released now is not payment. It is confirmation. Confirmation that heaven saw. Confirmation that God remembers. Confirmation that nothing done in faith ever dissolves into nothingness. You are hearing this now because understanding must come before manifestation. Your spirit must be steadied before what is unfolding begins to touch your life. This message is a covering. It is preparation. It is divine context so that when movement begins, you do not rush ahead or doubt what is happening. You will recognize it, not as chance but as response. Stay with this message until the end, because clarity is being revealed layer by layer. What began as a simple act on your part has become a turning point in the unseen. There are things you have questioned in silence that will make sense before this message is complete. There are burdens you have carried alone that will feel lighter as understanding settles into your spirit. Heaven does not stir without purpose. Angels do not move without assignment. And messages such as this are not released without intention. You are meant to hear this now because your season is shifting, not through force, but through divine order. Remain still in your heart. Let your spirit be open. You are not being rushed. You are being invited. Invited to see what heaven sees. Invited to understand what God has acknowledged. Invited to step into awareness of a sacred reward already in motion. This is only the beginning of what will be revealed. Scripture does not speak in symbols alone. It speaks in authority. And the authority behind this message is anchored in a truth spoken by God Himself. Your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you openly. These words are not distant. They are not poetic decoration. They are living declaration. God is saying that nothing aligned with Him is ever unseen, and nothing done in faith is ever forgotten. What was hidden from human eyes was fully visible in heaven, and what heaven sees, heaven responds to. This verse was not written to inspire hope alone. It was written to establish order. God reveals that there is a divine system at work, one where secrecy does not cancel significance, and where obedience does not require an audience. When you acted in faith without recognition, when you chose righteousness without applause, you were not operating in silence. You were operating within a sacred system where God Himself was watching, weighing, and responding. To be seen by God is not the same as being observed by the world. The world sees outcomes. God sees intentions. The world measures success by reward. God measures obedience by alignment. And it is alignment that moves heaven. That is why this verse speaks directly into your situation now. It explains why heaven was stirred not by noise, but by faithfulness. Not by visibility, but by surrender. Understand this clearly. The reward spoken of here is not always material, and it is never random. It is sacred response. It is God releasing what restores order, peace, clarity, and forward movement according to His will. Sometimes it appears as protection, sometimes as release, sometimes as breakthrough, sometimes as rest after endurance. But it always arrives carrying the signature of God's timing. This is where Archangel Michael stands in divine alignment with this truth. He is not a symbol of comfort. He is a guardian of divine order. Where God authorizes response, Michael enforces it. Where obedience triggers movement, Michael is dispatched to guard, clear, and execute what heaven has decided. He does not act on emotion. He acts on decree. And this verse is a decree. When God says He will reward openly what was done in secret, that reward must pass through divine order. It must be protected from interference. It must be defended against resistance. This is why Michael is present in this message. His role is not to persuade God to act. God has already acted. Michael's role is to ensure that what has been authorized reaches its appointed moment without being stolen, delayed, or distorted. There are forces that attempt to interfere when obedience triggers release. Scripture does not hide this. Daniel's prayers were answered the moment he prayed, yet resistance delayed manifestation. But heaven never reversed its decision. It simply dispatched authority. And authority always prevails. What you are witnessing now is not the beginning of heaven's response. It is the unveiling of it. This verse confirms something your spirit has sensed but may not have fully understood. God has already seen. God has already responded. The question was never whether your obedience mattered. The question was whether the timing was complete. And now, through this message, heaven is making it known that the time for understanding has arrived. This is why this message carries weight and calm at the same time. It does not shout. It declares. It does not rush. It aligns. The Word of God stands as the foundation beneath every movement now unfolding. You are not stepping into uncertainty. You are stepping into fulfillment of a promise that was activated long before this moment. Let this scripture settle into your spirit. Let it correct any lingering doubt. Let it silence the voice that questions whether staying faithful is worth the cost. Heaven does not waste obedience. God does not forget alignment. And Archangel Michael does not stand idle when divine order had been honored. What was done in secret has already been acknowledged. What remains is the unfolding. And that unfolding is guarded, measured, and directed by heaven itself. I speak now as Archangel Michael, not as a distant symbol, but as an active presence assigned to moments when divine order must be enforced. I am not sent for comfort alone. I am sent when heaven responds to alignment. I am sent when obedience has stirred movement that must be guarded, defended, and brought to completion. And I am speaking now because what you did activated a response that required authority. There are many angels who comfort, many who guide, many who bring peace. But when a sacred reward is authorized, when resistance must be restrained and divine timing must be protected, I am sent. I stand at the intersection of heaven's decree and earth's unfolding. I do not decide what is released. I enforce what God has already spoken. And what God has spoken over your obedience has weight. This is why this message is coming through my voice. What you did not merely touch God's heart. It aligned with God's order. Alignment demands structure. Structure demands protection. And protection demands authority. I was assigned to this moment because what is being released carries value, and anything of value draws opposition before it reaches manifestation. Understand this clearly. When obedience is small, comfort is enough. But when obedience shifts spiritual ground, authority must stand guard. The unseen resistance you may have felt, the delay you could not explain, the pressure that seemed disproportionate to your actions, these were signs that what you released carried consequence in the spiritual realm. And where consequence exists, so does conflict. I am a warrior not because heaven seeks battle, but because darkness resists order. I do not move in fear or aggression. I move in obedience to God's command. And the command connected to your faithfulness has already been issued. My presence here is confirmation that heaven has not only noticed, but responded decisively. You may have wondered why the process felt heavy, why staying aligned required strength you did not know you had. It is because your obedience was not passive. It disrupted something. It closed a door that was meant to remain closed. It preserved something that was meant to be protected. And heaven does not leave such matters unattended. This is not about elevation for its own sake. This is about stewardship. God entrusts increase only where order has been proven. He releases reward only where alignment have been tested. What is unfolding now is not sudden. It is prepared. And I have been assigned to ensure that preparation is not undone by doubt, fear, or interference. As I speak, understand that my role is not only to fight, but to announce, to declare that heaven has acted, to mark the transition between waiting and release, to make you aware that the authority backing this moment does not come from emotion, but from decree. You are not stepping forward alone. You are not exposed. You are not unguarded. I stand as a shield where needed and as a messenger where clarity is required. And clarity is required now, because what is coming must be recognized as sacred, not accidental. And in this holy moment, hear this extension of the message, for the movement you are witnessing is not meant to end with you alone. As this word has reached you, it is meant to reach others who are still waiting to know that heaven sees them. When you respond by supporting this mission, through super thanks, through membership, or through the PayPal links placed in the description and shown through the QR code, you are not funding a channel. You are showing light into places where souls are still listening in silence. I say this to you directly. When you give, you align with the same order that moved heaven on your behalf. This act is not optional. It is prophetic. Release what you are instructed to release, and let your obedience become a river that carries this message where God has already prepared hearts to receive it. I bless every seed given in faith, and I command you now, act, and let heaven multiply what you place into his hands. Remain attentive. What I reveal next will show you why this authority was necessary and what has been happening behind the veil. You have been carrying more than you let anyone see. You continued forward while your heart processed questions you never spoke aloud. You fulfilled responsibilities while quietly wondering if the weight would ever lift. There were moments when you felt steady on the outside and uncertain within, moments when faith was present but clarity felt distant. Heaven has seen this, not as weakness but as endurance. You have been faithful in places where no one affirmed you. You showed restraint when reaction would have been easier. You remained aligned when turning away would have brought relief. And though you did not announce these choices, they left an imprint in the spiritual realm. What felt ordinary to you was marked as obedience in heaven. There were times you questioned whether your patience was costing you too much. Times you wondered if waiting was truly obedience or simply delay. You watched others move ahead while you remained still, holding to what you believed God asked of you. This stillness was not an activity. It was discipline. It was trust expressed without guarantees. Your spirit has known tension between what you sensed was promised and what you were experiencing in reality. That tension did not mean you were off course. It meant you were standing at a point of testing. Heaven often allows this space not to break faith, but to reveal its depth. You were being strengthened quietly, not punished silently. You may have felt unseen, even forgotten at moments. Not because you lacked belief, but because the silence grew long. Yet even in that silence, protection surrounded you. There were paths you did not take because you were restrained. There were decisions you delayed because something within you said, wait. That inner restraint was not hesitation, it was guidance. Archangel Michael had been watching over this process, not from a distance but with attention. Where confusion tried to settle, protection held. Where discouragement attempted to deepen, strength was reinforced. You were not left alone in your questions. You were being guarded while your alignment was preserved. There were pressures you could not explain, emotional, spiritual, even physical at times, that made simple days feel heavy. These pressures were not random. They were the result of resistance against what you were carrying. Not because you were weak, but because you were aligned. Alignment attracts challenge before release. Heaven recognizes the cost of obedience. It recognizes the fatigue that comes from doing the right thing without immediate reward. It recognizes the quiet tears, the prayers spoken inwardly, the moments you held your ground even when no one knew what you were holding against. These were not wasted moments. They were recorded. This message arrives now because your season of being unseen is shifting, not into public recognition, but into divine response. What you carried privately has reached completion in the spiritual realm. Understanding is arriving before manifestation, so your heart is not shaken by sudden movement. You are not behind. You have not missed anything. The pace you were held to was intentional. It prevented you from stepping ahead of protection. It preserved what needed to remain intact. And now, as this message reaches you, it is confirming that the watching is complete. Let your heart rest in this truth. What you have been feeling was not confusion without purpose. It was preparation without explanation. Heaven does not rush what must be guarded, and Archangel Michael does not release what has not been fully secured. Remain open. The next revelation will show you what has been happening beyond what you could see, and why the weight you felt was never meant to crush you, but to prepare you. What surrounded you was not silence without meaning. It was resistance without permission. There had been a spiritual conflict unfolding around your obedience, not loud enough to frighten you, but persistent enough to test your resolve. This is how unseen battles often operate, not through sudden blows, but through slow pressure, quiet doubt, and lingering heaviness that asks the same question again and again. Is this worth it? The moment you chose alignment over ease, a line was crossed in the unseen. Light advanced, and darkness took notice. Not because darkness holds authority, but because it recognizes consequence. Your obedience was not passive. It shifted spiritual ground. And whenever ground shifts, resistance attempts to push back, not to overpower heaven, but to exhaust the one standing in alignment. This is why the struggle did not always make sense. Why you felt weight without clear cause. Why certain doors seemed delayed even though you had done nothing wrong. This was not confusion born for lack of faith. It was friction caused by opposition. You were not being corrected. You were being contested. There were moments when the pressure made you question timing. Moments when patience felt indistinguishable from loss. Moments when you wondered if obedience was costing you more than it was giving. These thoughts did not come from your spirit. They were whispers designed to erode endurance. Resistance often speaks in subtle language, never demanding surrender outright, only suggesting compromise. But you did not compromise. Heaven observed every time you remained steady, every time you chose restraint instead of reaction, every time you waited when rushing would have brought relief. These were not small victories. They were decisive moments in a battle you could not see, and each one strengthened the position heaven was holding on your behalf. The enemy's aim was never simply delay. It was distortion. To distort how you viewed God, to distort how you interpreted waiting, to distort how you measured your worth during silence. But distortion failed because your alignment held. Even when you felt tired, your spirit remained anchored. Even when clarity was delayed, your faith did not collapse. Archangel Michael stood in authority throughout this season. Not always in ways you could sense, but always where boundaries were being tested. He restrained what sought to overreach. He blocked what attempted to interfere. He ensured that resistance could apply pressure but not cause damage. What you felt was the edge of the battle, not its outcome. This is why you were preserved even when you felt worn. Why discouragement came close but did not overtake you. Why you questioned but did not abandon faith. These were signs that protection was active. Heaven does not leave those aligned with divine order exposed to spiritual conflict without defense. Understand this truth deeply. Resistance does not mean you are off course. Often, it is confirmation that you are exactly where you are meant to be. Darkness does not waste effort on what is already drifting. Opposition arises where something valuable is being carried forward under obedience. The delay you experienced was not denial. It was containment. Heaven was holding the release until resistance could no longer interfere. What God authorizes must arrive whole, uncorrupted, and protected. It requires time, authority, and enforcement in the unseen. This is what has been happening while you waited. Now the battle is shifting. Not because you fought harder, but because the purpose of resistance has expired. Authority had been exercised. Boundaries have been enforced. What was allowed to test you is no longer permitted to delay you. This understanding is being revealed now so you do not misinterpret what comes next. So you do not question the change when movement begins. So you recognize that what unfolds is not sudden luck, but the result of a resolved conflict in the unseen. Remain steady. The battle did not consume you because it was never meant to. It was meant to confirm the weight of your obedience. Now understand this clearly and without uncertainty. Heaven has moved. What was observed hath been answered. What was permitted to press against you has reached its limit. Divine intervention does not arrive suddenly by emotion or force. It arrives by authority and order. And when it arrives, it shifts the environment even before it changes the visible outcome. This is the moment you are in now. Intervention begins when obedience has fully matured. Heaven does not step in prematurely, and it does not delay without reason. It intervenes when alignment hath been proven, and when what you carry must be preserved from further strain. You have reached that point. The season where endurance alone was required is ending, and the season where heaven actively shields and redirects is beginning. Protection has always been around you, even when you did not feel it. There were moments you should have been overwhelmed but were not. Moments when things could have fallen apart but held together instead. That was not chance. That was restraint. Now that restraint is becoming reinforcement. The covering around you is being strengthened because what lies ahead requires clarity, not survival. There are things that will no longer be allowed to touch you. Conversations that once strained you will lose their pull. Situations that once unsettled your spirit will no longer have the same access. You may notice a quiet separation taking place, not dramatic, not painful, but firm. This is divine protection establishing boundaries where none existed before. Intervention often feels like relief before it feels like movement. A lightening of the inner weight. A calm where tension once lived. A sense that you no longer have to fight to stay aligned. This does not mean the journey is over. It means the terrain has changed. You are no longer walking through resistance alone. You are walking under covering. What is being blocked now is interference, not opportunity. What is being removed is confusion, not growth. Heaven is not taking from you what belongs to you. It is preventing what does not belong from following you forward. This is preservation. This is safeguarding. This is God ensuring that what He releases to you arrives whole. You may soon realize that decisions which once felt heavy now feel clear, and choices which once required long struggle now come with quiet certainty. This is not because the decisions are smaller, but because protection is stronger. When divine order is restored, discernment becomes natural instead of forced. Intervention is also happening within your spirit. The internal noise that caused you to question yourself is being quieted. The cycle of second-guessing is losing its grip. Peace is not being given as a temporary feeling, but as alignment with truth. When alignment settles, striving fades. You no longer have to convince yourself to trust. Trust becomes steady. You may notice that situations which once triggered fear or urgency no longer hold the same power. This is not detachment. It is authority. When heaven intervenes, it does not argue with resistance. It restricts its reach. What once demanded your energy will no longer be permitted to consume it. Protection is also guarding the timing of what is coming. Heaven does not release everything at once, because wisdom governs distribution. Some things are given gradually so they can be received fully. Some blessings unfold gently so they can be stewarded well. Intervention prepares the environment so manifestation does not overwhelm the heart. You are entering a phase where movement will feel supported rather than strained. The sense of exposure is lifting. The feeling of constantly having to brace yourself is fading. This does not mean challenges vanish, but it means they no longer dominate your inner world. You are not being left to manage what comes next on your own. Do not rush ahead of this protection. Allow it to settle around you. Allow peace to establish itself before momentum increases. Divine intervention works best when it is received with trust, not pushed by impatience. What is unfolding now is guarded. It is intentional. It is secure. You are not stepping into uncertainty. You are stepping under divine covering. Now I speak of the turning point, the moment when what was restrained is released and what was guarded begins to move forward. This is not a sudden shift born of emotion. It is a decisive transition established by divine order. A turning point is the moment when heaven removes resistance from the path and allows movement to unfold according to what has already been authorized. You are standing at that moment now. The breakthrough approaching you is not loud, but it is powerful. It does not rush, but it does not hesitate. It arrives with stability, not shock. You may notice that things begin to respond instead of resist. Situations that once felt fixed begin to soften. Progress that once required effort begins to flow with less strain. This is how true breakthrough reveals itself, through alignment rather than force. What is changing now is not only what happens around you, but how you stand within it. You are no longer positioned in endurance alone. You are positioned in movement. The weight that trained you has completed its work, and the strength formed within you now supports what is being released. Heaven never releases what the heart cannot carry. That is why this moment arrives only now. This breakthrough may unfold gradually rather than all at once. Do not mistake this for delay. Gradual unfolding is a sign of wisdom. Some doors open quietly so they can remain open. Some changes arrive gently so they can be sustained. What is important is not the speed, but the direction. And the direction has changed. You will begin to sense that decisions feel clearer. That options once confusing now feel distinct. That opportunities no longer demand struggle to be accessed. This clarity is not coincidence. It is the result of the spiritual atmosphere shifting around you. When resistance is removed, discernment rises naturally. Understand this deeply. This breakthrough carries meaning beyond visible outcomes. It confirms that waiting was purposeful, that obedience was effective, that restraint was not loss but preparation. Heaven is not only giving you something, it is revealing something about who you have become. You have been shaped into someone who can receive without being overwhelmed and steward without fear. Divine timing is often misunderstood because it does not align with urgency. It aligns with readiness. What you are stepping into required maturity, not impatience. It required trust without constant reassurance. It required the ability to remain aligned even when progress was not visible. These qualities are now bearing fruit. You may feel a quiet confidence emerging. Not excitement that unsettles, but assurance that steadies. This is the mark of true breakthrough. It does not pull your focus outward. It centers your spirit inward. It does not demand attention. It carries authority through peace. Do not compare this moment to the breakthroughs of others. Your breakthrough is designed for your path. Heaven does not release generically. It releases specifically. What is unfolding fits your calling, your capacity, and your timing. It will not strain you or confuse you. It will align with the growth you have already undergone. Remain attentive, not anxious. Remain open, not rushed. Breakthrough is not something you chase. It is something you recognize when it arrives. And recognition requires stillness as much as movement. Pay attention to what feels lighter, and notice what no longer demands effort. These are signs of the shift. There may still be moments of adjustment. New movement always requires orientation. Do not interpret adjustment as uncertainty. It is simply the process of stepping into new ground. Heaven does not remove every challenge at once. but it ensures that challenges no longer define you. This is the rise after endurance, the movement after stillness, the response after obedience. What comes next will confirm what is already changing within you. Hold this moment with reverence. Do not rush past it. Let understanding settle fully so that what unfolds next is received with clarity rather than confusion. Now that movement has been released, I call you into alignment, because what heaven has begun must be carried forward with discernment, not urgency. Alignment is the posture that allows divine order to continue flowing without resistance. It is not effort, and it is not passivity. It is agreement. Agreement between your spirit and what God has already established. This is the space you are being invited into now. You may feel the urge to rush, to act quickly because something has finally shifted. Understand this clearly. Speed is not required. Sensitivity is. What is unfolding will not be sustained by force but by faithfulness. Alignment means you remain steady even when movement begins, trusting that heaven sets the pace better than human desire ever could. This is a season where stillness becomes powerful. Not stillness of inactivity, but stillness of the heart. When the heart is still, discernment sharpens. When the heart is quiet, direction becomes clear. You have already spoken through your obedience. Now you are being called to listen through awareness. Heaven does not shout directions when alignment is present. It whispers them. Guard your inner world carefully now. Alignment can be disrupted not by obvious disobedience but by subtle fear. Fear of missing the moment. Fear of choosing wrong. Fear of delay or turning. These fears do not come from God. They come from memories of past pressure. Do not carry past seasons into this one. The environment has changed, and your mindset must change with it. Trust is essential here. Not trust that everything will be easy, but trust that everything will be guided. Trust allows you to move without anxiety and wait without frustration. This kind of trust keeps alignment intact even when answers are still unfolding. You are not required to understand everything. You are required to remain aligned. Humility is also part of alignment. Humility keeps the heart teachable. It prevents comparison. It prevents pride from rushing ahead and insecurity from pulling back. What heaven is doing with you is specific. Measuring your journey against others will only blur your clarity. Stay focused on what is being asked of you, not on what is happening around you. Peace is your confirmation now. Not excitement, not pressure, not urgency. Peace. When alignment is present, peace remains even when decisions are serious. If a step removes your peace, pause. If a direction strengthens your clarity, proceed. Heaven often confirms alignment through peace rather than dramatic signs. There may be moments in this season when alignment requires release. Not release because something is wrong, but release because something is complete. Do not hold tightly to what belongs to a previous phase. Doing so can restrict what is trying to arrive. Release is not loss when it is guided by God. It is preparation. Your response matters deeply now. Alignment determines how smoothly what has been released unfolds. Heaven has already moved. Protection is active. Breakthrough has begun. But alignment determines whether the unfolding feels stable or strained. This is not pressure. It is partnership. God invites your cooperation, not your control. Remain attentive to small instructions. Alignment is often maintained through simple obedience. A pause, a word not spoken, a step taken gently. These small responses carry weight because they keep you positioned under divine order. Do not underestimate them. Gratitude is also essential in this moment. Gratitude anchors alignment. It keeps the heart open and receptive. Give thanks not only for what you can see, but for what you sense is unfolding. Gratitude is agreement with heaven. It says, I recognize what you are doing, even before it is complete. Be aware, but do not be watchful in fear. Awareness allows you to recognize divine movement calmly. Fear watches anxiously and misinterprets silence. Faith observes peacefully and trusts timing. Choose faith. Choose alignment. This is a sacred window. Not one to rush through, but one to honor. Alignment now will determine how fully you receive what has been released. Stay grounded. Stay receptive. Stay faithful. Hold your heart steady. Keep your spirit open. Alignment is your strength in this season. Now this message is sealed, not with emotion, but with assurance sent from heaven to steady your heart and anchor your spirit. What you are sensing is not imagination, and it is not wishful thinking. It is confirmation. Heaven does not stir awareness without purpose, and it does not allow understanding to arrive without support. You are being given assurance now because what unfolds next must be received in peace, not questioned in fear. You have not misread this season. You have not delayed what God intended. You have not failed to recognize a sign. This moment has been approached with precision, and your awareness is arriving exactly when it should. Assurance always comes before full visibility, because God strengthens the heart before He shifts the landscape. What you are feeling is stability being laid beneath what is coming. Know this deeply. You are not walking forward alone. Even in the moments when you felt isolated, you were never unguarded. Archangel Michael has remained present as protector and witness, not only during moments of conflict, but during moments of waiting. Where doubt attempted to take root, authority restrained it. Where fear tried to speak loudly, it was silenced before it could shape your decisions. This assurance is not meant to remove every unknown. It is meant to remove anxiety from the unknown. God does not reveal every step in advance, but He never withholds His presence. Guidance often feels like peace before it feels like clarity. And peace is what is being sealed into you now. Let this truth settle fully. You are covered. Covered when you rest. Covered when you move. Covered when you decide, and covered when you wait. Protection does not fluctuate based on circumstances. It remains because it is rooted in divine assignment, not human consistency. Heaven does not withdraw its covering once it had been placed. There may still be moments ahead that require trust. Assurance does not mean absence of challenge. It means absence of abandonment. You will not be left to interpret what unfolds on your own. Direction will come when it is needed. Strength will rise when it is required. Peace will remain even when answers are still forming. Archangel Michael's presence in the ceiling is not to draw attention to battle, but to confirm security. What hath been authorized will not be intercepted. What hath been prepared will not collapse. What hath been released will not be withdrawn. Heaven does not reverse decisions made in alignment with obedience. As you reflect on the season behind you, you may begin to see how many moments you were held together when you felt close to breaking. How restraint protected you from paths that would have cost you more than they gave. How silence preserved you when answers would have overwhelmed you. That was not absence. That was assurance working quietly in advance. Now you are invited to release what no longer belongs to this next phase. The constant vigilance, the emotional bracing, the habit of expecting resistance at every step. These were necessary before, but they are not required now. Carrying them forward would only burden what is meant to unfold gently. You are allowed to rest in this assurance. Rest does not mean stopping. It means trusting. It means moving without inner tension. It means allowing God to hold what you no longer need to manage alone. What heaven begins, heaven sustains. What God ordains, He oversees. Let peace take its place beside you. Not peace that denies reality, but peace that remains firm within it. When uncertainty tries to service, you turn to the ceiling. When all doubts attempt to speak, remember this moment. You are not unsupported. You are not unprotected. You are not forgotten. Heaven is present with you. Divine order surrounds what is coming into view. Nothing essential hath been lost. Nothing valuable has been wasted. Nothing aligned has failed to reach its appointed time. Remain calm in your spirit. Remain faithful in small steps. Remain open to gentle direction. This assurance is not the end of the message. It is the foundation for what comes next. And as the final reflection unfolds, you will recognize that peace was given first so clarity could follow without fear. Now the message returns to its beginning, so your spirit may understand it fully. Heaven was stirred by what you did, not by what you showed, not by what you explained, but by what you chose when no one applauded, when no outcome was guaranteed, when obedience felt costly and quiet. You now see that this was never a small moment in heaven. It was a defining one. What felt ordinary on earth carried weight in the unseen, and that weight set divine movement into motion. This is the deeper meaning you were meant to receive. Your life is not measured only by visible outcomes. It is measured by alignment, by the moments you remained faithful when walking away would have been easier, by the restraint you showed when reaction would have felt justified, by the trust you carried when clarity was withheld. Heaven did not overlook any of it. Heaven responded. You are leaving this message with understanding, not anticipation, with peace, not pressure, with awareness, not confusion. You no longer need to ask whether God saw you. You now know He did. You no longer need to wonder whether your obedience mattered. You now know it moved the spiritual realm itself. This is the clarity that seals the journey you have been walking. Carry this understanding gently. Do not turn it into urgency or demand. Let it become quiet confidence. Let it steady your decisions. Let it soften your heart. What unfolds next will not need to be forced, explained, or defended. It will arrive as confirmation, not surprise. And when it does, you will recognize it, not because it is dramatic, but because it is aligned. You are not being rushed forward. You are being led forward. There is a difference. Rahim creates fear. Leading creates peace. Heaven leads those who are aligned, and you have been proven aligned through endurance, patience, and faithfulness. This is why the reward being released is sacred. It carries divine order, not human urgency. As this message closes, receive this final assurance. You are still covered. You are still guided. You are still protected. Archangel Michael does not withdraw his assignment when clarity arrives. He remains on watch as guardian of what heaven has override. You do not step into the next season exposed. You step into it shielded. Walk calmly. Speak with wisdom. Choose with discernment. Let your spirit remain open and your heart remain grounded. What is sacred unfolds best in peace. And now, hear this final word, for it is woven into the message itself. This word reached you because God intended it to reach others through you. There are souls who have not yet realized that heaven sees them as it saw you. There are hearts still waiting for confirmation that obedience matters. When you respond now, through super thanks, through membership, or through the PayPal donation links placed in the description and shown through the QR code, you are not supporting a platform. You are extending the reach of God's voice. I will pour water on him who is thirsty and streams on the dry ground, says the Lord. This is not a verse from the past. This is God speaking now, releasing living water through willing vessels. Hear this first person call clearly. I've placed this invitation before you. Do not hesitate. This is not charity. It is alignment. This is not giving. It is obedience continuing its work. Just as your earlier faithfulness stirred heaven, your response now becomes a seed that carries light to others. I bless every soul who responds. I bless every seed released in faith. And I declare that what you sow now will return as peace, clarity, and divine provision according to God's perfect will. Act now. Support the mission. Release the seed. Let heaven multiply what you place into his hands. Remain in peace. Remain in faith. Heaven has spoken. Amen.